And we want to take you live now to Orange Beach, Florida, which is just off to my east, where we have Orange Beach, Alabama, thank you. We have sustained damage here. We have flooded roads, emergency vehicles that are out. They can now go out because the winds have died down for us here. But it was a rough night from Orange Beach over here into Gulf Shores, taking that northern eye wall with those winds that have been gusting over 90 miles an hour right at the shore. And of course, Orange Beach is right on the Gulf, just like we are here in Gulf Shores. And so there's no friction, and that water just comes screaming off the Gulf of Mexico right into the land and people's property and people's businesses. And of course, there's nothing really to stop that water either. It's impossible to. And so the roads were flooded really all along this area from Orange Beach to Gulf Shores. And some of that water, that standing water, is still there. And we now have, Florida Governor Ron De Santos on the phone with us. Governor, thank you for being with us this morning. Pensacola is one of the hardest hit cities in Florida right now, with 24 plus inches of water and surge at 5.5 feet. What do you have in Pensacola, stationed in Pensacola right now, to help the people there?
Well, we have both with the Florida National Guard. We've activated hundreds of National Guardsmen. They have high water vehicles to be able to go in and perform rescues if needed. We also have helicopters staged in the area. And then we also have activated some of the urban search and rescue teams, have scrambled those from other parts of the state, staged them up in North Florida, and so they'll be ready to go. Obviously, when you have 80-mile-an-hour winds, they're not going to be able to operate in that. So as the winds die down, if there's help needed, they will be there ready to do it. And so we're really looking at this. Yes, it actually got stronger on the wind, and 100-mile-an-hour winds is nothing to sneeze at. But as you mentioned, there's so much water being dropped. There's going to be more. This is a very slow-moving storm. You're going to see more and more water accumulate. You're going to continue to see flooding. But what will happen is, as this storm continues to move past places like Pensacola and goes north, the water that it drops north of the Panhandle is also going to impact floods that could happen several days from now. So this is not something that's just going to be a 1 or 2 day thing. People are going to have to be vigilant for several days. The other thing I think we're really looking at is the power outage. We already have 140,000 homes without power in Northwest Florida because the storm is moving slow, because you do have significant winds. Those power crews are just not going to be able to get in until it passes. Of course, when you have a lot of flooding and the power lines, that creates big problems too. But the power, most of it's in Escambia County where Pensacola is, but you do have power outages in other places. We anticipate seeing more of that, and then hopefully you'll start to see some of the power crews in there as soon as the storm quiets down, hopefully as soon as tomorrow morning.
So what is the plan then going ahead in the next several days once we are finished with these strong winds and the water does go down, getting supplies in for those that are in need, perhaps food and other supplies as well?
Oh yeah, no, that's standard practice. That's ready to go. Our Department of Emergency Management. This is something that, as soon as we saw it on the radar, way down when it was south of Florida, they've been locked and loaded for that. So we'll be able to do that. We also have the ability now. Fortunately, we have much lower COVID-19 prevalence in Florida than we did in July, but we still are addressing that, and so we do have non-congregate sheltering options. There will be health screenings if you're in a congregate shelter area, and that's going to be standard practice for us. So yeah, we'll have all of that. And I just think the message for folks, the water is something, they say run from the water, because don't think you can drive your car in it if a street's flooded. Don't think that this is something that is to be played with. I mean, this is really serious. I would not like to have a Category 5 wind, don't get me wrong, but I can tell you in terms of dealing with this, in terms of some of the risks to life, these flood events really are serious. And so I think most people in Florida are taking it very seriously. But please make sure you err on the side of caution. Run away from that water. Do not get caught up in a flood.
Do you think your plans will be taking you to this area in the coming days after the storm?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. We're going to try to get there this week. Obviously, we want to see the storm pass. We want to make sure everyone's getting what they need to get. But then we are going to monitor how the water levels go once the storm's north and water starts coming down as these basins get filled. That's something that we're really concerned about. I think that you've obviously seen flooding already. They probably have gotten most of the rain they're going to get. They are going to get more for sure. And so we're obviously monitoring that. But it's really unknown what will happen in 2 or 3 days as you may have even additional flood events. So we're going to be ready for that, and obviously just want people to remain vigilant.
Governor, you mentioned Corona and COVID. How has that affected, the staging areas and the planning and the preparation to go in and help the people, though?
Well, look, I think that we've been doing emergency stuff with COVID since March. We've ramped up for a couple storms already this year. We've done hurricane exercises. So these folks, this is kind of second nature to them. It's just like, all the first responders up and down Florida. These are pros. They figure out a way to get it done. I think the new wrinkle has really been, as a member of the general public evacuates, if they have to do that, making sure that they're screened so that if you do have congregate sheltering, you don't end up having an outbreak. And so we were able to actually do that with Isaias. We didn't have very much evacuation because it stayed off the coast, but in the areas that we did, they screened people with questions. They did ask, they did take temperatures, and there were some who didn't pass that who ended up in non-congregate sheltering. So we think that formula worked. And again, I know that there's some folks that will evacuate on this one. We don't know how many yet, but I think that plan will be effective.
All right, Governor De Santos, we appreciate your time this morning. And of course, we will check back with Governor De Santos as the storm progresses and once it leaves and once we see the destruction that is left behind. Speaking of that destruction, Jim Cantore has been in Pensacola all morning long, dealing with the surge, dealing with the rain, dealing with the wind, getting deeper and deeper into that eye wall. I hope Jim can hear me at this point. Jim, as I was watching the progression of this, that eye wall was slowly creeping towards you. And I would say within the last hour or two-ish is when you had the worst of the weather. Can you confirm that that's what you felt as well?
Steph, I'm sorry, my comms are so poor, I can make out every other word. You asked me to confirm something. Could you just ask me one more time?
Sure, if you can hear me, Jim, and I understand if you can't. It seems over the last couple of hours that eye wall, the meat of the eye wall really rotated into Pensacola. Would you say that's when you had the worst of the weather, was in the last couple of hours opposed to the last, 4 hours or so?
I mean, honestly, it's about the same, Steph, to be honest with you. We're just in the meat of this. The visibility, because of the rain being so heavy and intense in that eye wall, is hard to see. But here's the deal. Look at this. Okay, you've got the third highest surge on record right now in Pensacola, 5.55 feet. This is behind, ahead of Katrina, behind the Miami hurricane of the 1930s, and of course Ivan, eerily enough, on this date back in 2004. And everything here obviously underwater. I was just talking to a policeman who is sharing the high ground with us. Our vehicles are out of the water. They're another another 1.5 feet, I'd say, from even touching the water here. We got another 6 inches till high tide. But he said, Jim, we got so many calls. We have a fire. We can't get to people. Look at this. And that's why you need to go up at this point. Obviously, we've been without power now for several hours. So, people have been in the dark, and now they're coming up on first light. And you can just see how high the water is in this parking lot. Now, in terms of getting it to the point where you ruined the vehicle, this is salt water, yes, but we haven't seen it get into these engines. You'd probably see the cars start to flash a little bit. All right, and of course, these are trucks, vans, and the sort like that, but the water is actually deeper as you go back toward that sign. But water covering everything here. They cannot get to you. All right, so people are going to have to hunker down and deal with this. How much longer could this last, and could the water go up? Well, high tide's at 11, past 11:30 this morning, and as long as we're in this eye wall, which continues to hammer us with heavy rain, we've had over 2 feet of rain at the Naval Air Station. Gusts over 90 miles per hour. 90 miles per hour. So between all of that, without power here in the dark and underwater. And as we mentioned, the third highest storm surge on record here in Pensacola. And it came up fast about 3.5 hours ago, which is why we retreated to higher ground. But you can see, you know, there's just water everywhere. This is salt water. This came from the bay, and it came in fast. And so everything pretty much submerged. Nobody can go anywhere. Nobody can go anywhere at this point. I'm hearing alarms from buildings, cars, and things like that. No power and very, very low visibility being in this eye wall and with these gusty winds. Now, I've come around a side of a building, so it's not as windy as I was, you know, back out in Main Street. But Main Street's right behind me here. So I've just come in to this area to give you kind of a different perspective now that we have light. But whether you're on Main or Palafox, I mean, all of this just absolutely underwater. This is kind of amazing to see, guys. I'm going to be honest with you, but we talked about this. We talked about the 4 to 7 foot storm surge. This is verifying. We could easily go up, you know, another half a foot or maybe a little bit more than that. And when's this water going to go out? We're not going to go out until we get a change in the wind that's either offshore or we get into maybe enough of a section of that eastern eye, not eye wall, we're in that eastern eye wall, but the eastern eye where that'll calm the winds down a little bit and the push on shore. If that happens at the time of lower tide, we're going to start going down a little bit, but nobody's going anywhere here. This water's going to stay up at least till noon, I would imagine, and perhaps even after that. And remember, that 2 feet of water that we got, that's all trying to get out. That's all trying to get out into the bay as the bay is pushing in. So that's nearly impossible for that to happen. But guys, I mean, I've done a lot of these, and I was in the storm surge in Katrina, you know, the 28 feet in Gulfport, Mississippi, which is unthinkable. But, you know, just eerily, when you think about a city like Pensacola dealing with the kind of storm surge, white caps on top of the storm surge, and just about everything out here submerged. It was interesting talking to the police officer. He goes, Jim, I really wasn't prepared for this. We thought Cat 1 at landfall, we can deal with that. Ivan was bad. That was a 3. We got to change the message. We got to talk about storm surge. It's got to lead the way. It's got to lead the messaging in some way. We got to be able to flip the switch on that, because this is worse than you would get with the wind. A lot of these city buildings are going to be able to handle Cat 3 winds, but they can't handle the storm surge that we're getting in through here. Again, guys, you're just joining us this morning. Downtown Pensacola dealing with now what is a 5.5 foot storm surge. That is the third highest storm surge on record for the city of Pensacola, and sadly we are not done rising. As far as the eye can see, we are underwater. All right, let's show you more of Pensacola. Jordan Steele, that's 6 blocks from me. Jordan, show us what you've got here at First Light.
All right. You talked about not too long ago the engineering of roads and how the water sloped away from the road, and behind me you could actually see that. The road top, you maybe have an inch of water, and then it comes to the gutter. I mean, I'm on the sidewalk right now, and it's above my ankle. You drop down to the curb, and it's going to be above my calf as you get the wind that's still whipping very, very hard. Now, this water has nowhere to go. The wind is pushing it up. It's trying to drain back south into the bay, but it can't because the tide's rising. So it gets pushed in, and it comes into any crevice it can find, right? Anything, it could just get in a different area. And so now, let me make sure I'm not going to soak myself here. Now we're in the parking garage. And I mean, you've got a drain here that's bubbling up, and all the water, I mean, look, if you pan right to my left, we got water all the way to the other side in that vehicle. You can see that truck there, it's up to the tires. So this is in a parking garage. Like you said, Jim, this water just has nowhere to go, and it does look like that this is going to continue, unfortunately. I mean, we have been in the thick of it. We talk about 24 plus inches of rainfall at the Naval Station here in Pensacola, and that's just one of the rain gauges. It's been absolutely relentless, and the wind is still cranking. I tried to just walk around since daylight to look at some of the damage, and I'm not going very far. And I'm seeing tree limbs broken. I'm seeing complete trees ripped up out of the ground, physical structures broken. And so you talk about the messaging of a Category 1 or a Category 2 hurricane. And it's so important for everybody to realize that the category itself isn't the only thing that we have to base storm damage on, right? That goes with the wind threat. But there's so much more to it than that, especially areas out along the coast, the beaches, the storm surge alone. You talk about having the third record storm surge in Pensacola, and we've got somewhat of a protection. There's a little barrier on the south side of Pensacola Bay that blocks us a little bit, and of course the water going over that and the bay with huge swells that you were showing, Jim, and with the capsized water. So I think this is a situation where today's going to be a day where we watch Sally inch itself northward, and as that happens, all areas north of the panhandle of Florida, parts of eastern Alabama, you go in through Georgia now, we're talking about all these locations that are going to get impacted because this tropical energy was intensifying upon landfall. So there's a lot of built-up energy stored within. And since it's such a slow mover, it's going to take its time for it to deteriorate out and move to the north and the east. So it's going to take some time. I just want to urge everybody that if you are inland, just know it's coming your way, and it's going to be a problem. All right, let's take a live look at Mobile, Alabama. This is an area where we have huge problems. This is where we had most of the Sally move onshore, and you can see devastation is continuing. And of course, we'll get another update from more people out as we've got meteorologists stretched all across the Gulf here this morning. All right, we will be right back. Stay safe, everybody.
Shake it, kiddo. Love, comma, dab.
I've got this. Kellogg's Rice Krispies Treats. A little love when it's needed.
Looks like they picked the wrong getaway driver.
They'll be paying for this for a long time.
They will, but with accident forgiveness. Allstate won't raise your rates just because of an accident, even if it's your fault.
Cut! Sonny.
Is that good?
Line. The desert never lies.
Isn't that what I said?
No, you were talking about Allstate and insurance. Let's try again. Everybody back to one.
Accident forgiveness from Allstate. Click or call for a quote today.
Got bugs in your house? Get Zevo. Zevo is the bioselective insecticide. Deadly for bugs, safe to use around people and pets. And just watch how Zevo works without harsh chemicals. Get Zevo at Target and Home Depot stores.
Constipation can happen all around us. You just need to know where to look. Luckily, there's Colace. It's the #1 doctor-recommended stool softener brand for occasional constipation.
Ever wonder where the capital A in Chick-fil-A came from? It started with grade A, top quality chicken. But we believed everything, not just the food, should be grade A. A is for all the little things we do to bring you our best every day.
The A in Chick-fil-A means a loving, caring team. We're all very supportive of each other. It goes beyond being a team. It's like a family, you know? I definitely can't imagine working anywhere but Chick-fil-A ever, especially right now.
What's going on? Let me help lift and push and push. There, it's up there.
Hey, Josh.
Wrinkles send the wrong message. Help prevent them before they start with Downy Wrinkle Guard.
Have you heard of nuts.com? It's the best kept secret of savvy snackers all over the country. Incredible nuts, dried fruits, organic snacks, and gluten-free treats. There's something for everyone to love, including fast delivery.
Best pistachios ever.
Love the dried peaches. Can't stop eating them.
White chocolate toffee cashews are awesome.
The holy grail of honey sesame sticks. So tasty.
The quality has made me a customer for life. I'm nuts about you guys.
With so much to love, check out nuts.com.
You went to college? You're smart. So why are you getting ripped off on your student loans? At Credible.com, we've helped tens of thousands of people save money by refinancing their student loans. In 3 minutes, we'll get you actual rates from multiple lenders. We could save you hundreds of dollars a month by refinancing to a lower rate. Don't get ripped off on your student loans. Let's focus on your future, not your debt.
Visit Credible.com and in 3 minutes, see how much you could save.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 60 degrees under fair skies. Today, partly cloudy, high 86, winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. Low 56. Winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny. High 78. Winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Just an awful situation here in Pensacola, underwater now with the third highest surge on record, 5.55 feet. All right, this is now ahead of Katrina, believe it or not, and behind Ivan, which eerily happened on this date back in 2004. Everything that I can see is underwater, and now I'm starting to smell fire. So there's fires. This is saltwater intrusion here in Pensacola, and I can smell the fire probably south of me because we have a south wind here. And here's the other thing. The atmosphere has produced a phenomenal amount of rain. Check this out. Estimated 30 inches of rain here. 30 inches of rain here. The state record in Florida is 45. God help us if we get there here in Pensacola. All that water is trying to get out as the southerly winds and the tide are keeping it in. So there's a very good chance that this water will go up a little bit more, maybe to 6 feet, and chances that this will be with us till after noontime today. So saltwater intrusion, we have heard from local police officers. There's been numerous 911 calls, people asking to be rescued, scared, the power's out, looking outside, literally surrounded by water here as a result of this. And you can just see in this parking lot, just so you know, our vehicles are up. They're up another 1.5 feet, till they're on dry ground. And that's where we wanted to retreat to, and we did that. And the water came in fast. Literally in 10 minutes, we probably got about a foot of water. That's how quick it came up. So vehicles like this are fine for the moment. I'm starting to see other vehicles, though. If you look on the front of that car right there, you'll see the flashers going, the hazard lights, okay? So now we've gotten some saltwater intrusion to the battery. That's probably going to go. But a lot of trucks in through here doing okay at the moment. But again, saltwater and electronics do not mix, ever, ever, ever. This is just, again, a part of the problem here in Pensacola, kind of watching the bay now invade the downtown area. If you're just joining us, this is the third highest storm surge on record. It's ahead of Katrina now here in Pensacola, and now it's 2 feet behind what we had with the Miami hurricane in the 1930s. So that was about 7 feet. We'll have to get to 7 feet to get to second place. A place we don't want to get. We don't want to get at all. But the problems are that people are just stuck. We are still in the eye wall. The southerly winds are keeping all of this in. And obviously, with this kind of water getting into businesses and into the downtown area in a lot of places, we're going to have a massive cleanup here in Pensacola. And back on April 14th, I believe it was, somewhere in that range, back in 2014, I may have the date wrong. A lot of stats going through my brain this morning. We had over 20 inches of rain at a 2-day rain event. Flooded downtown. It was horrible. And that was a spring flooding event. This, of course, is a hurricane. It's storm surge. And we're not only going to have the storm surge component, but we beat that with the rainfall. All right, we beat that 20 inches of rainfall here in Pensacola. So all that's going to try and get out, but it can't as long as we have the southerly winds. So really a horrible setup for Pensacola with a slow-moving hurricane, agonizingly slow. Coming ashore this morning, if you're just joining us, at about 4:45 local time near Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, which really, as Stephanie's been reporting, has taken a beating. We've got docks, we've got boardwalks, beach erosion, just massive hit here with the wave action, really all the way down to Pensacola Beach as well, where they've had a main water break as of last night. Last night they had a main water break. So guys, again, winds are still pretty gusty. I've kind of gotten a little bit of protection from the building I'm standing behind here, but they do seem to have lightened just a little. Hopefully that will continue to be the trend. If we can get even into that eastern eye wall, or eastern center, I guess, a little bit, we should see some of this water retreat. But, Steph, that's a big if right now, especially with the tide that's coming up. Now at first light, Steph, give us an idea of what you're seeing down there in Gulf Shores.
Well, Jim, our winds have now shifted, right? Because our storm is to our north, and now we're getting an east wind here. Yeah. And that's what we're experiencing. And I want to show you some of the damage from the wave action. Obviously, this is a dune, and it actually went all along. That is a clear cut into the dune right there from the waves and the winds. The waves are a little bit calmer, but this pier that was destroyed by Ivan in 2004, rebuilt in 2009, has a massive chunk that has been eaten away, ripped away, and is gone. They will have to rebuild that. There has been significant damage from Perdido Key to Orange Beach here in Gulf Shores. We just got first light. There's obviously flooding, and so even though we're in the center of circulation and we don't have those super strong winds and that push of water, any sort of water that comes up at high tide obviously could exacerbate a situation. In Mobile, the I-10 bridge there, we actually have video of a semi that has been tipped over. Obviously, the bridges here are all shut down because the winds, the higher you get away from the ground, the stronger they go, and they usually shut those bridges down when you get winds sustained around 45 miles an hour. So they're going to have to go out and check all these bridges now before they let people drive over them to make sure there's been no structural damage. But the rainfall has been huge. We are now getting in a report of 30 inches. And it's interesting because when I was on earlier, I said, oh, 24 feet, and I said of snow and not rain. And my producer said, you know why you said that, Abrams? Because usually when you talk feet, you're talking snow and not rain. So when I say, no, 24 feet, sorry, when you say 2 feet of snow is what you normally say, but it's 2 feet of rain. You don't always say that. So we have 24 inches near the Naval Air Station, and then 30 inches not too far from there. We'll be back with more. And welcome back live here. Our Hurricane Sally made landfall here in Gulf Shores. Our winds have been shifting around as the storm has been slowly moving north at 3 miles an hour, now getting an east wind. I want to show you some of the damage that we've gotten here, at least to the dunes and the beaches. You see a huge chunk of the dune is gone, but even bigger than that, a massive part of the pier that was destroyed with Ivan that made landfall on this exact date 16 years ago, took out the pier. Look at that big wave right there. And now obviously we have damage again. They rebuilt it in 2009, but it is pretty eerie that Hurricane Ivan made landfall on this date, which is September 16th, 16 years ago, essentially right here in Gulf Shores as well. Here's what we know so far about the system. Made landfall a few hours ago as a Category 2 hurricane, and it really gained strength. In the last 24 hours before landfall, went from 85-mile-an-hour winds to 105-mile-an-hour winds. Nearly 14 million people are in the path, in the cone of the system. Close to 500,000 homes and businesses have lost electricity in the hurricane zone. And in Bellevue, Florida, just west of Pensacola, unofficially reporting 30 inches of rain from Sally. And it's very believable because in Pensacola, we have had 2 feet of rain, over 24 inches. And that's where Jim Cantori has been this morning. And, you know, Jim, I had a slip earlier. I said 2 feet of snow. And the truth is, how often are you saying 2 feet of rain? Usually when you say feet, you're talking snow, not liquid water.
Steph, quite frankly, in the last decade, we've said that way too much. Okay? I mean, we've said that with so many hurricanes. This is just absolutely ridiculous. But I want to bring in Mike Wood, who's the PIO here for the Pensacola Police Department. And Mike, again, just kind of give us an idea of what you're hearing on radio around the city. I mean, you talking to me earlier, you're just saying, dozens and dozens of cars submerged. And that's just the start of it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of cars that are underwater. I don't think anybody saw this coming. This bad. We have officers that are responding to critical emergencies, and the rest of the calls we're just having to stack up.
So nobody can really get to all these 911 calls, can they?
No, we've got high water more than we expected. We're trying to get some high water vehicles in here to assist us from the state.
All right, okay, so any word of when these high water vehicles could be here?
I don't know. They shouldn't be very far away. They were already en route yesterday.
Yeah, and obviously with this weather, it's just going to slow the process. I mean, we're still in the eye wall, by the way, getting all this. And we've had, just so you guys know, if you just joined, 5.6 feet of storm surge, which is the third highest on record here. And you remember Ivan, we had 9 feet back eerily on this date in 2004, which absolutely blows my mind. But in terms of what you're hearing coming in across, we've had a fire too, I understand?
Yeah, there's been a house fire call. I don't know exactly what the situation is there. We're smelling smoke downtown. I don't know where that's coming from.
Here.
So, yeah, we've got some more issues to deal with after this subsides, that's for sure.
All right, so Again, when are you expecting some help from the cavalry in through here to get in?
Well, they're already here. They're sheltering in place right now until it's safe to go out and start assessing damage.
All right, and obviously with the water staying, I mean, they can go out in this kind of water though because of the vehicles they have, right?
We've got a few officers that are out right now making some rescues.
Sorry.
But the rest are sheltering in place.
All right, man. It's interesting you said this caught you by surprise. What caught you by surprise? Did you just not expect the storm surge, or did you not expect the storm to get as strong as it did overnight?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. Originally thought it was going west, and then when it started coming this way, it was a Category 1. And then we wake up this morning to a Cat 2. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think about it, 2 days ago, we thought we were going to be on the outer fringes of that here in Pensacola. Still expecting a storm surge, mind you. But now, you're basically dealing with the eye wall as we weren't expecting that 2 days ago. But yeah, this has been a horrible storm, dude. I mean, we're talking about, just almost every day the track was shifting to the east. And now, again, we're kind of maximizing our storm surge in through here. Do you remember it all back when Ivan came in? How long the water stayed up? Because that was another big hurricane where we had, almost 10 feet of water here in downtown Pensacola.
Yeah, it was a good day or so before we were able to get the water back down everywhere. So it was a while. It seemed like forever.
Thank you for your time, for talking about this, giving us a brief. Again, guys, help is on the way in through here. Everybody, I know that people can't hear me because we lost power, but just have to hunker down. If you got ways of communicating with them, just tell them to hunker down and hang in there, stay to high ground, because as Mike was saying, not uncommon for the water to stay up for a long period of time. I certainly would be shocked if it started going down before noon. The only way that's going to happen is if we get in the eye and these onshore winds stop the push. But again, as you can see, as far out here, we are literally underwater in many, many places. Much more to come here on the Weather Channel. Stick around.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meteorologist Jordan Steele, and we are tracking Hurricane Sally that is just devastating the coasts of Alabama and Florida. Florida Panhandle has been seeing so many power outages. The state of Florida alone, more than 200,000 power outages. And of course, we have to talk about the water. I mean, I'm in a parking lot and it's above ankle deep between calf high deep. In the streets, all right, we mentioned how we've got several cars completely waterlogged. I mean, I'm looking at an eddy in the water on the street where it's trying to flow out towards the Gulf, but yet the wind keeps pushing it northward. So huge problems in the Pensacola area, and it continues to come down. Of course, we'll give you guys an update when you look at radar where Pensacola is. We're literally just on the eastern fringe of the center of Sally, and as that south bands start to push north, we could get a break, but we need the entire system to take just a little step to the east for Pensacola to get a break. But as of right now, it doesn't look like that is going to happen. All right, I want to get you guys caught up on what's going on in southern Alabama. We send it on over to Stephanie Abrams.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. We want to bring in the mayor now of Gulf Shores, Mayor Robert Kraft, who's joining us. And Mayor, we have seen some video and pictures of significant damage to structures around Gulf Shores. What have you seen or heard of so far this morning?
Well, we've got a lot of our buildings and a lot of our residences are flooded. This has been a major rain event. We haven't suffered as much surge damage as we have in other storms, but we've had more rain and more flooding because of all this heavy rain. We've probably had close to 25 inches of rain in Gulf Shores, and that's hard to manage.
How about rescues and emergency services? How did they fare overnight? Were there any rescues that needed to be done?
All night long. The fire department was constantly busy. We had 2 fires break out about the same time, small residential fires, but things that had to be addressed. I think they did we have 25 people in a emergency shelter that we opened last night, and they were all human rescues, and that's just south of the Intercoastal Waterway. We got another shelter that we've opened north of it. It's got like 10 people in there that had to get to emergency help. So, yes, it was a busy night for our fire team.
Have you heard of any injuries being reported or worse?
Now, nothing in Gulf Shores other than small injuries. I mean, cuts and bruises and beat up, but nothing significant so far. But there are areas we haven't heard from yet. We've still got roadways closed to the outskirts of our area down in the Fort Morgan area, which is the very end of this peninsula, and it's isolated and really low. We haven't heard much from them. We haven't been able to get down there yet, trying to get in touch with the folks down there. So not that I know of at this point, but it's really a dangerous situation.
So what is the plan for the day? Obviously, we still need to wait for the entire storm to get through before people go out and start assessing and cleaning up. So what is the plan of care for the day, and what do you want the residents here to know?
Well, our main access in and out goes over an intercoastal waterway bridge, and it is stopped. We've got the bridge closed, and you can't get on or off the island unless it's an emergency situation. So getting that roadway open and getting access like the Fort Morgan area into our beach area, all of which are underwater, that's primary, because then we can get down and do an assessment as to what really needs to be done. We have no power in the city anywhere that doesn't have a generator, so we're trying to get power back on. We're basically starting ground zero.
All right, Mayor, we certainly appreciate you coming on. One last question. You know, this was a Category 2 at landfall, and I feel like a lot of times people say to us, oh, it's just a 1 or a 2. And I really try to emphasize, when you're in that eye wall of a Cat 1 or Cat 2, it is still extremely significant, and that's what we saw with this.
It was hard to go through. I live right here in Gulf Shores, and that eye wall for hours was just pounding on us, and we'd had so much rain in advance of that. It was frightening. I've lived here during Frederick, and I lived here in '79. I was here through Ivan. So and this measured up to that. It's a different kind of damage, but it's still devastating.
Yeah. It always is. Mayor, we certainly appreciate you taking time, and we'll check back with you as we head throughout the next 24, 48 hours and after when the cleanup begins. Let's now go to Jim, who, you know, was in the eye wall. And Jim, I'm looking at the radar right now. It's starting to really be to the east of Pensacola now. Things should be improving for you a bit. You know, but as I was talking to the mayor, and we always try to emphasize, listen, a Category 1, Category 2 eye wall is no joke, and that eye wall is still intact and definitely doing damage inland.
Yeah, Steph, and that's the problem, too, especially with all the rain now. You're going to have that wind pushing a lot of trees over. We're going to have power loss. I think I was seeing almost 500,000 customers without power at this point, which is a lot. And we've seen an exponential rise in those power outages this morning. But here in Pensacola, guys, we are experiencing not only historic two-day rainfall of over 2 feet. What was it? Tiger Point, I just saw over 33 inches of rain. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. Now we've got the third highest storm surge on record here in Pensacola, 5.6 feet. So it's waffling a little bit. If this wind dies down a little bit and this rain holds off, maybe we won't get much higher than that. But we've still got about another, 3/10 of an inch to get, or 3/10 of a foot to get all the way up to high tide here at 11:30. This water more than likely isn't going down for several hours here in Pensacola.
Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
Currently in our area, 61 degrees under sunny skies. Today, partly cloudy, high 86, winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 56, winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny, high 78, winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel, ladies and gentlemen. We are tracking Hurricane Sally, and it is battering Pensacola. We are in Pensacola, the downtown area, and there is an incredible amount of water coming through right now. I just wanted to show you, we're on South Jefferson Street. This runs north to south, okay? Within the last hour, I would say we've had more water pouring from the south heading north than we had this entire morning. It's incredible. If you look down where the camera is right now, you can literally see it looking like a river coming from the Bay of Pensacola pushing northward. It's out of control. This road right here is now completely impassable, and you can't even see the middle of the roadway where we were seeing bare pavement not even an hour ago. So the amount of water that's coming in, and that storm surge continues to pummel this area, is pushing so far north. You almost got to get to Highway 110 to get out of it. So two things I want to show you here real quick, Rodney. You've got the fire hydrant sitting over my left shoulder, just to your right. Notice how high it is. That's already several inches above the pavement because it's on the sidewalk, okay? Another thing I want to show you is over my other shoulder where the water eventually stops, and that is going to be all the way up towards Highway 110, all right, the interstate. That's going to be this direction. So to get out of it, you have to drive north. The problem is if you are in it, you can't drive anywhere. So no one needs to be coming into the downtown Pensacola anytime soon, because this is a huge problem that's going to be here for a while. What we're noticing is as the wind continues, it's going to push a lot of that water up as well. Now, we will see high tide in the 11 o'clock hour. Hopefully by that time, we get the wind to die down a little bit, and we get the swell, or we get the surge just to kind of push back as high tide will then be receding, and then hopefully all of this will push back out. But Jim, I know it's going to take some time. You and me both had to move locations this morning because we were right at the bay's edge and it was just out of control. How is it where you are right now?
I think my IFB is dying.
Jim, go! Yeah, it sounds like Jim. Yeah, it sounds like Jim's having some communication problems here with his IFB. And you can imagine, I mean, we have rain coming in every direction, and so just to keep the communication going is really, really hard. We had power for a long time in our little isolated spot in downtown Pensacola. We were watching transformers pop all over the place, lighting up the skies before the sun came up, and we were hoping to keep power on for the entirety of the storm, but we were one of the last ones, and now that power is out. And if you guys are just tuning in with us, we were talking with Jim and some of the emergency managers here on site in Pensacola, and they're saying that they're starting to smell smoke now, and we're going to now have to see what kind of damage that Sally has given the Pensacola area, because it has been relentless all night long. Imagine a storm. I mean, you can walk faster than 2 to 3 miles per hour, right? The storm's going 2 to 3 miles per hour. When within it, the winds are whipping 100+ miles per hour wind gusts within that storm, and then the rain won't let up. We've had some spots. We've had a train spotter, a National Weather Service train spotter, northwest of Pensacola, near the Bellevue area, recording 30 inches of rainfall. 30 inches! I mean, now we're talking about Hurricane Harvey type rainfall and amount of moisture that's coming out of the sky. That's what happens when you have a storm just sit on top of you and does not move. Now, the problem with this is it's still here, okay? And it's not letting up. We will eventually see it get caught up with the jet stream to the north and eventually push to the north and east. But for the time being, all day, it's going to be just like this as it moves north. All right, let me send it, Stephanie, over to you. I know you're in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Stephanie, heading it your way.
Okay, so what you're seeing in Jordan's shots and Jim's shot, which we're going to try to get back to him because he has, thigh-deep water where he's located in Pensacola. That's what we experienced when that original eye wall came through overnight here in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And now that we got to the center and it's moving past us, we now have an east wind, the winds are shifting, things are a lot calmer. But there is significant damage in Gulf Shores, and we're going to get out and show it to you as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe to do so. But we have seen significant structural damage, people that had to be rescued due to the flooding water that's been coming into buildings. And right here at the beach, you see that the dunes have been sliced Okay, the beaches have been eroded away, and more significant, the pier, which, by the way, was significantly damaged in Ivan in 2004. They rebuilt it in 2009. Waves still crashing, by the way, pretty high there. A huge chunk of that pier is missing. They're going to have to rebuild that, and this is what happens. The water is just that strong when it pushes ashore, and then, of course, the wave action on top of it. Now, the rainfall has been tremendous. We're talking 2 feet or more into Pensacola. We've actually had a report of 30 inches just outside of Pensacola, and here along Gulf Shores, we had a flash flood emergency overnight with the rainfall that fell, near 20 inches of rain, and also those winds gusting around 90 miles an hour. Now, all this has moved in. Now, don't think just because this storm is interacting with land and it's getting some friction, it's going to die right away. It's holding strong, and we have crews inland to show you what that's like. In Mobile, we've seen winds gusting over 70 miles an hour. Not as much rain into Mobile, but that east side, that's where we're heavily loaded with that rain. It will continue to fall in Alabama, in Florida, into Georgia, and eventually into the Carolinas. We're not finished with this. And by the way, it's going to be until Friday when we get rid of this. So we have all day today, Thursday, and Friday still with this storm. Stay tuned to the Weather Channel. We'll carry you through it all.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the last hour of AMHQ this morning. I'm meteorologist Jordan Steele. We've got meteorologist Stephanie Abrams in Alabama. We've got meteorologist Jim Cantori, who is sitting here in the Pensacola area, along with me, myself, and Jen Counterfagno in studio with Kelly Cass. I want to tell you a lot about what's happening within this last hour. We've got Sally that has brought historic flooding to the Pensacola area. It has been absolutely hammering this area with the 3rd highest storm surge on record so far, surpassing the 5-foot level, and that water is still coming in. If you look behind me, this is North Jefferson Street running north to south. I would say about an hour ago, you could still see the road. We've had more water come in within the last hour than we've had all morning, and it's coming from south, from the Gulf, and from the Bay of Pensacola, due north, all the way up to Highway 110. Cars are trapped, people are trapped in their area, and of course, emergency managers and officials here are saying stay in your safe place and do not leave, do not get out on these roads. This water is extremely deep and very dangerous. I want to show you something here, Rodney, if you can come my way. This piece of board is one of the many things floating down in these waters, and it hit me in my shins as we were doing a live shot. I want to let you know of how deep we're looking at. Obviously, you can see my boot here, but if you look at the base of this, I'm on the sidewalk, all right? And so this water, you know, what, half a foot or so, maybe a little bit more than that, several inches here, but we're on the sidewalk. We're still above where the road is. So if I come out here, if I use this to kind of give me some kind of where I know where I'm walking, I'm not going to fall in. All right, now I'm at the curb. All right, so if you can see the edge of this, and I drop it down, I know the wind is super high right now. And if I put my finger, that's how deep it is on this road, okay? What is that, 2 feet? All right? I mean, I'm just guesstimating here, but that's why this road you can't drive. I mean, it's above your tire in most situations, and it's going to cause any car to stall. And that is why the emergency man, I'm going to put this down. This thing's whipping in the wind. That's why emergency managers here are trying to bring in maybe amphibious vehicles or high water vehicles that can come and rescue some of the people that might be trapped. And so now that it's daylight, we're really assessing the damage here. The problem here is we still can't get to every location because you've got high tide still coming in. It doesn't come in until you get to the 11 o'clock hour. So we've got that going on here. I know we also have some severe threats happening. We want to get it back in the studio with Dr. Postel with tornado warnings issued right now.
Yeah, we do, Jordan. Thank you very much. For Calhoun and Jackson counties in Florida, we've got a tornado warning. This is probably going to be one of many today with a very volatile atmosphere. As typical with landfalling hurricanes, we have its tornado warnings again, which includes Alpha, Cypress, and Grand Ridge. That goes until 8:45 local time. So actually about another 45 minutes, but trust me, these tornado warnings will sort of pop up and then expire much more quickly than that. It is going to be a very active day, severe weather-wise, particularly along the outer edges of Sally in these rain bands that are basically stationary, moving the rain elements in them and the severe weather moving almost from south to north very quickly. If you get a warning, act immediately. Find shelter if you can. Interior room away from as many windows as possible with as many walls between you and the outside. It's going to be a very active day, Steph, severe weather-wise. I'm going to send it back to you, Stephanie Abrams.
Okay, so things here at the coast are still severe. There's flooding, there's a lot of damage, there's still debris. We spoke with the mayor earlier, and he, wants everyone to stay inside until this fully passes. I know the winds are a lot lighter right now, but there are still some roads that have water over them, and they haven't been able to even check on some people yet. Behind me, this is the pier that we have here in Gulf Shores. Huge chunk of it has been taken away, and we can actually show you kind of before and after from yesterday. And by the way, this pier was damaged in Ivan back in 2004, and they rebuilt it in 2009, and unfortunately they're going to have some work ahead of them yet again. And this whole system has come through us. We went through the eye, and now we're kind of on the back side of it, which is a little much weaker than the north side of it. Our winds are now coming from the west because there's a counterclockwise flow around a storm, and so now we're getting more of that west wind coming in and just a little bit of rain. But that heaviest rain has fallen. It fell overnight. We had a flash flood emergency here in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and there is still some flooding that is out there. That will all continue to go down since the push of the water is now not going to be happening since the storm is to our north, but it is still out there. And the rainfall totals have been anywhere from 18 inches, 20 inches, up to 30 inches just over the border in Florida. And all this rain's continuing to push in. If you're watching us, the eye wall is the worst part. It's still intact. It's not completely fallen apart yet. When these systems interact with land, there's friction. It doesn't have the energy from the water and whatnot, so they do tend to fall apart. But sometimes it takes time for them to wind down. And so watch out still for some of those gusty winds. Perhaps a tree falls. That will do significant damage to your house. And I know that no one can pinpoint exactly where that's going to happen. That's why everyone needs to prepare for the worst. And that's what we try to do, is prepare you for the worst, because no one can say exactly where that tree is going to fall and you're going to have that significant damage. But there has been significant damage here in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And once it is safe to get out and drive around and set up and show it to you, we will do so here on the Weather Channel. Now, as it goes in, it still has a lot of moisture associated with it. And water, surge, rainfall, flooding, it is the #1 killer when it comes to tropical entities. And so that's what you have to keep thinking about as the hours progress, because this system is really not going to be out of here until we head into our Friday. So if you live in Linden, Alabama, in Georgia, and into the Carolinas, you're going to see that moisture as we head over the next several days. All right, we're going to go back now to Jordan, who is in Pensacola, about 30 miles off to my east. And, Jordan, you don't have to be that far, to see quite a difference when you're talking about these storms. You guys were getting hammered in that eastern eye wall, and I was in the eye, with somewhat calm winds, most certainly relatively calm winds.
Yeah, you were in the right spot, I'll tell you what, because we just have not had a break. And now that we are seeing the storm shift a little to the north, we're getting somewhat of a break. I mean, don't get me wrong, conditions are still terrible out here, but at least the rain, I mean, it was coming down so heavy, there was no way out of it. You couldn't keep yourself dry. And so now we've got to deal with this storm surge. And I think the big story is going to be for all those locations that you pointed out, Steph, to the north of where we are. The rain is going to be the biggest threat. You will definitely have the wind pickup, but it's the amount of tropical energy that is stored up in this storm. I think the flooding, the flash flooding that could be coming out of this for all those areas in northeast Alabama, in places like Georgia and just north of the Florida area, that's going to be the big talker. Here, it has been all about the amount of rain. I cannot believe that truck is going through. I mean, there is so much water behind me. We're looking probably at least 2 feet here. You got to get to the center of the road, and it has nowhere to go but just going up to higher ground, right? And so some of those areas that are in the parking garage that we're parked in likely going to be trapped for now because there's no way out. The water's just too deep, and the water's still coming in like a river from the south, moving its way to the northward. So I do think that as we head into the next couple of hours, you got high tide at the 11 o'clock hour. You get past that this afternoon. You get Sally to move itself a little bit farther to the north, and I think then we're starting to at least get some breathing room in the Pensacola area. I can hear stuff behind me, and this thing's starting to break. So the wind is still relentless, of course, and the big story here is going to be the flooding from where I am. Now, Jim Cantori is in a location about 6 blocks from me or so, but he's closer to the bay, the water's edge, and it has been really bad where he's been. So, Jen, I want to send it your way so you can really paint the picture of what it was like overnight for you when all those waves were coming ashore.
Guys, unbelievable here. This is probably the lightest wind and rain that we've dealt with. So that's been the biggest change, Jordan. You can probably attest to that as well. It's still, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still gusting. It's still horrible. At times, it could knock you off your feet. But the big issue is the storm surge. The waters that come in here and is being held in with this southerly wind across the bay, 5.6 feet again. So here we are. Let's put this into perspective for you. We've already passed Katrina storm surge here. We're third place right now, behind the Miami hurricane of the 1930s that came through here with over a 7-foot surge, and 954, which was the surge in Ivan, just sickly on the same doggone date today, back in 2004. Anyway, you can see what's going on, guys. Water everywhere, as far as the eye can see. We were talking to Mike Wood earlier. He's the public information officer, and there's people he can't get to. They can't get to right now. There are amphibious vehicles around. They are making and going to continue making rescues. There have been so many. They've been overwhelmed by the 911 system. It was completely overwhelmed. There has been a house fire that they couldn't obviously get to because of the water in through here, and are obviously still trying to work out the logistics of that. There's just so much that happened quickly, and he says, frankly, we were a little caught off guard, which is a conversation we all need to have later on, and why that is. But again, it has a lot to do with the track shifting and the intensity ramp up during the overnight hours, and that makes the communication of what you expect and what the actual outcome of it much, much different. Now, the big question on everybody's mind here is, when's this water going to down? When are we going to be able to clean things up? Well, we're still approaching high tide. That's at about 11:30 this morning. So we've still got another, third of an inch, a third of a foot that we could go up there. And, you know, depending on how much push we continue to get with this southerly wind component, this water is going to be very, very slow to recede. So we're going to have to deal with this. We're going to have to deal with the wind, obviously, and what is probably going to be extensive power outages until we get winds out of the northwest. Once that happens, and that may be, oh my goodness, like late tonight, that'll help to push a lot of this water offshore, and then people can get in and assess the damage. If you're watching us from other parts of the country and you have friends in Pensacola that still have cell phone service, you know, share this information with them, because they don't have, you know, they can't watch us on TV right now, and they want to know what's going on, and they're in their homes. All this happened in the middle of the night. We lost power. You know, the water came up very, very quickly, which is classic of a storm surge situation. We had to retreat from our location down on the bay, back up here to high ground, where our vehicles are above water, well above water at this point, but we're down showing you what's going on through here. All right, guys, we got a lot to go with this storm. It is onshore now, thank goodness. This should be a sign of weakening over time here, but Greg, still, this slow, agonizing movement with the wind and the rain is going to exacerbate problems northward. Already 500,000 customers without power in Alabama and Florida. Over to you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and probably more to come. I mean, as you mentioned, this agonizingly slow pace that Sally is moving at 3 miles per hour. According to the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, it's still a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane, bringing wind gusts perhaps close to that in some spots, although the wind is really beginning now to weaken. But we're still dealing with a lot of heavy rain and an onshore wind, allowing some of that water to still come on board. But then again, this is the most important point right now. 3 miles per hour. This is the way Sally has behaved essentially for the last few days. Look at some of the wind gusts that we've got. Now, this is not a complete sample by any means, but some of the higher ones that we could find, 90 to 95 to 99 mile per hour wind gusts, were probably pretty common across coastal Alabama here, in and around and perhaps just to the east of Gulf Shore. So that kind of wind was actually a bit higher than expected by many, and likely contributed to a lot of damage that we're getting reports of. Now, as far as the onshore wind that Cantori was talking about in Jordan Steele, we still have that all across parts of the western Florida Panhandle, with the area of low pressure right about there. So only moving at 3 miles per hour, we're going to continue with that onshore wind, and although not as strong as it was earlier, we'll still be dealing with significant coastal flooding for hours yet to come. And on the periphery, if that's not enough, we still have tornado warnings from time to time in these outer rain bands, very common with landfalling tropical cyclones. So we will indeed see that tornado threat continue all day today. Right now, some of the current winds out there, we're getting gusting to 54 in and around Fort Walton. Some buoys out there gusting still to 80 miles per hour. A little bit farther to the west, Pensacola Pensacola gusting to 77. Mobile earlier gusted to 82, now at 58. Overall, look at how much rain has fallen on the map here. We've gotten a lot of reports now, almost 2 feet of rain in southeastern Alabama and across parts of nearby coastal Florida. So think about that. We've seen winds gusting to near 100 miles per hour. 2 feet of rain, and if that weren't enough, as I mentioned, we're still going to be dealing with that tornado risk today, and of course a lot of heavy rain yet to come, and that is advancing northward. You can see that rain moving across Alabama, and it is going to continue its northward movement. This story is not over. We're going to have to deal with a lot of rain and potential flooding through parts of Georgia, South, and North Carolina as well. So we have a long way yet to go with Sally. The story is yet to be completed. Send it back to Jim in Pensacola, Florida.
And Greg, as you know, 88% of the deaths, the fatalities in hurricanes and landfalling tropical systems happen because of either inland flooding, rainfall itself, and of course storm surge, which is what we're dealing with right now. So people just need to stay to high ground, not try to venture out in this. Just the most eerie thing. Unfortunately, we're coming to you from our truck camera, because our original camera actually went down. I mean, you know, when it rains like this and the wind and whatnot, that happens. It's equipment, it's delicate equipment out in the weather, and sometimes you lose the camera. So this is the only shot I can give you. But I can tell you what I can see. And as far as the eye can see, here on Main Street and Palafox, I mean, you've got water literally flowing down between the rivers. You've got street signs that have actually come down. Here across from the museum, which is where I am, then down Main Street, you know, literally these white caps on the water. So this is just crazy seeing this, and the fact that it's staying up. You can still see it at light in through here, and we can still show you these pictures. It's just absolutely nuts. It is still gusty. We are still going to have some southerly component of that wind, and unfortunately, as long as we have that, okay, we are going to continue to keep a lot of this water in here. So it's going to be a while. Like I said, tell your friends and family members via cell phone, if they still have service, that it is going to be a while. All right, we're going to still go through the eye wall with this thing, whether it be the southeastern eye wall or even the southwestern eye wall once the storm moves to our west. The fact that onshore wind is going to keep this water up. And remember, we had 33 inches of rain at Tiger Point, Florida. That's trying to get out into the Gulf. Our coverage of Sally continues.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 62 degrees under fair skies. Today, a mix of clouds and sun, high 86, winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 56, winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny, high 78, winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day out.
Welcome back as we continue to track Sally and Pensacola, one of the areas certainly feeling the impacts. You can see some very, very gray skies. Looks like some trees there, the tops of some trees, at least swaying around in some of those winds. Again, as Sally continues to lash portions of the Gulf Coast. We also have been dealing with the issues in Gulf Shores. That's where Sally made that landfall very early this morning, around 4:45 Central Time, making that landfall near Gulf Shores. And you can still see a very angry waters here, really lapping around in the wave action as well. Very angry looking waters here. And that will continue to be the case until this thing finally pulls and moves out of the way. All right, well, if you're just joining us, let's get you to what we know at this hour with Sally, as I mentioned, making that landfall near Gulf Shores, Alabama at 4:45 this morning Central Time. It was as a Category 2 hurricane. National Hurricane Center cone puts nearly 14 million people in the cone. Meanwhile, some areas near Pensacola are reporting at least 24 inches of rain so far. And right now, more than 500,000 customers are without power, and that's in Alabama as well as Florida. And emergency officials right now are urging Pensacola Beach residents to store water. This after a water main break. So lots ongoing here for us when it comes to this hurricane. And we want to head now down to Pensacola, Florida, where, of course, we find our very own Jim Cantori. Jim, you've been surrounded by water, it seems like, all morning long.
Unbelievable, Alex Wallace, to see Pensacola here. Third highest storm surge on record in Pensacola, 5.6 feet. Behind the 30s hurricane in Miami, which was over 7 feet. Of course, this is just blowing my mind. The fact that literally to the day, back in 2004, Ivan, which set the record surge here in Pensacola at 9.4 feet. To the day. Just absolutely weird. Again, guys, as far as the eye can see, we're right across from the Pensacola Museum here. We have water. We have white caps coming down Main Street. It's just the most eerie thing certainly one could see. So, and this is not just fresh water. This is salt water that's come in off the bay in Pensacola. And unfortunately, you know, when it gets into engines and things like that and electronics in the engines, that's pretty much the end of that. We've seen a lot of the, almost like somebody has their hazards on. That's the discharging of the battery, unfortunately, when it gets salt water intrusion on the electronics. So a lot of people caught off guard, as we heard earlier from Mike Wood, who's the public information officer here for the Pensacola Police. But we're going to be in this for a while. And like I was telling you guys earlier, you know, text your friends, tell them they're going to be in this for a while. We still have hours till high tide. So as the water's maybe trying to get back out into Pensacola Bay, it can't, because A, we have a southerly wind, and B, we have the tide still going up. So remember, the tide is the base. The storm surge and the wind on top of that are going to have to move with the tide. So even if that stays at steady state, the water's still coming up, unfortunately. And that's what we could see. We could go beyond the 5.6-foot record that we actually have in through here, the third highest, again, in Pensacola history. It's going to be a while before we get the water out. Again, overwhelmed by trying to get 911 calls and get to people, house fires, things like that. And, of course, damage that I can hear. You may be able to hear it on my microphone with sheet metal rolling around. Which I may put my helmet back on, but either way, just a horrible situation here in Pensacola, which is just obviously continuing to unfold with all this water. All right, Steph, again, a lot of big waves, as we know, in the Florida Panhandle and down into southern Alabama as well, especially around Gulf Shores and Orange Beach. Absolutely tearing apart the beaches there, the dunes, the docks. You got damage down there as well.
We do, Jim, and it's not only from the waves, it's also from the wind. And we want to take you actually up towards Mobile, just over the, not far from here, you know, go into town in Mobile in the Spring Hill neighborhood. We now have video of significant damage. Now, here's the thing. In Mobile, we had winds gusting over 70 miles an hour. I believe 72 was the highest gust that we've gotten so far. And I'm curious if that took a tree down and then hit this house and caused this damage. Did some sort of debris hit the window and then the wind goes in and destroys it? I don't have the answers to that, but as you can see, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how it happened. All that matters is we have damage, and we're getting more video in like this as well from Perdido Beach. Also significant damage to condos there. And here in Gulf Shores, as a matter of fact, we have seen video of damage that is structural damage to big condos. And we will show you that as soon as we get the video in here to the Weather Channel and as soon as it's safe to go out and take that video. And of course, we will bring you live shots throughout the day and into tomorrow as well of what we see. The water is starting to go down. The waves are not as bad as they were, but obviously they did do some damage. As Jim mentioned, we have the right behind us here, the dunes are cut. And by the way, the beaches all along here, Alabama to Florida, they had just gotten eaten alive from this storm here. And then, of course, the pier, which they just rebuilt in 2009 after Ivan destroyed it, massive chunk that came out of the pier there due to the wave action and that water rise as well. We now have to focus inland. All right? I mean, yes, in Pensacola, Jim still has that water. Yes, we still have some winds here. But I also want to wake everyone up that's living inland and is going to be dealing with the threat of very heavy rain falling from this system and still some gusty winds with that eye wall that's still holding together. We'll be right back.
All right, morning update here from Pensacola, Florida. Guys, I've never seen anything like this. We're in downtown Pensacola, and this is the view from the 3rd floor of my hotel room. Look at the streets. I mean, it is just terrifying. I haven't even stepped outside. I did get word that I don't think our hotel is flooded, but every street downtown Pensacola is just submerged. And the waves keep coming. It looks like the wind's letting up a little bit, but goodness, this is just, I have never seen anything like this. Some of the worst surge we've seen certainly since Ivan. And of course, we'll continue to keep you updated with the latest here in and around not only Pensacola, but all of Northwest Florida and Southern Alabama, as Sally has officially now made landfall.
Chris Bruin, in his own words, as we watch again, just about as far as the eye can see anywhere, whether you're in Chris's room or you're down Main Street or Parallax. It doesn't really matter where you are, guys. We are inundated here with 5.6 feet of storm surge in downtown Pensacola. This is salt water that's come in, saltwater intrusion in many areas, and many vehicles, as you can see, submerged quite a bit, some to the point where the electronics have actually failed the vehicles. So there's going to be a lot of vehicles that are actually on the street having to be towed in through here. So we're at high point. We're doing good. You know, we still, unfortunately, have several hours till high tide. And as long as these southerly winds continue to push up from the bay, they're going to keep pushing the water in. Because remember, the surge and the wind component of the water rise is going to move. All things being equal there, if the tide's coming up, that's got to move with it, right? So the water is going to at least stay up, provided everything else stays in steady state. So we'll talk to Dr. Postel about what he feels about that in just a second. But again, guys, in addition to that, I think this whole problem has been compounded by the fact that we've had 2 feet plus rainfall. Tiger Point, Florida, listen to this, 33 inches of rain. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. State record's over 45, so we're not going to get there. But still, now we're watching all this huge waterlogged system essentially just crawl at about 3 miles an hour. All right, I'm walking maybe at about 3 miles an hour right now. That's how fast the storm is moving. So not very fast at all, and that means tons of rain. And even with the wind as it dies down inland, it's going to be enough to cause more and more power outages. At last point I saw, and I'm sure it's different than that, so don't quote me as the latest data, we're at 500,000 people, 500,000 customers without power right now, and that's just Florida and Alabama. So lots of issues in through here. So let's bring in Dr. Greg Postel and talk a little bit about this and how much higher we could go, if at all. Dr. Postel here in Pensacola, as you know, we still have high tide to go, and we still have, you know, obviously this southerly component of the wind, which is keeping the water in, plus some 20 to 30 inches of rain, Greg, that's trying to get the heck out of here.
Right, it's going to be.
How much higher do we go, or do we at all?
You probably go a little bit to high tide, and then I think we'll see things sort of stall out and then begin to recede a little bit thereafter. And I can show you where Hurricane Sally is right now. And you mentioned it is moving at just a couple of miles per hour. I was just thinking about it with my weather producer, Erica Lopez here. The landfall was about 4 hours ago, and I put the position of where I think the center of circulation is, and it's really not that far from the beach. It's only moved about 10 or 12 miles inland since landfall very early this morning. So we are still dealing with that onshore wind, in some cases gusting over 60 miles per hour, and that is continuing to push water inland, Pensacola Bay, everywhere in between, all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to many areas inland. So the flooding will continue, and not just be confined to areas around Gulf Shores and Pensacola, but all the way through Destin and Panama City. That south to southeast wind will continue throughout much of the day today. Some of the winds, as I mentioned, reporting still at last hour, gusting to 77 at Pensacola, and still some pretty strong wind gusts all the way as far east as Panama City. The winds will gradually die down, but the direction of the wind won't change much over the next few hours. And look at how much rain we've gotten really so far with the system. We're talking on the scale here, over 2 feet of rain in some spots, and we are potentially getting reports of over 30 inches already. So in places that are still raining, we may see totals that approach 3 feet, which is remarkable. Tornado watch is in place until 6 o'clock this evening with the tornado threat, which typically accompanies landfalling tropical cyclones. And we are slowly seeing the rain move northward across Alabama and Georgia. And you can see that will continue northward into western, south, and North Carolina throughout the day tomorrow and into Friday. Last graphic I'm going to show you is the continuation of that south-southeast wind along the coast throughout much of the afternoon, and then the rain moves northward from there into Georgia. Stay tuned for all the latest coverage on Sally from the field. We'll be right back.
We're in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and just to our east is Orange Beach. They've had significant damage. We've had significant damage here in Gulf Shores and also over towards Perdido Key, Perdido Beach. We have a video that was sent to us from a condo there that has been hit very hard. And this is the type of damage. Again, remember, this is a Category 2. If you are in the eye wall of a Category 2, you will sustain significant damage. And homes, businesses not only have damage from the wind, but also from the flooding. This looks like it was some sort of wind damage. And you always wonder, is it a piece of debris that hits the glass, sliding glass door or window, and then the wind comes in and rips everything else apart? Or was it just the wind that, took out the window? We've had numerous trees down. Those are falling on homes, even inland. So yes, though we are seeing significant damage at the coast, there's been water damage as well. It's as the storm moves inland, we're still going to have those winds, especially the northeast side of this storm is still holding together. That will take down trees, especially with all the heavy rain making the ground saturated. So you've got to keep paying attention to this, even though it has made landfall and it is moving in. If you live in, portions of Alabama, if you live in Georgia and the Carolinas, this rain is headed in your direction. We're starting to see a little more rain out here now from the system. Remember, we went through the northern eye wall. It made landfall here. We were in the eye. We were in that center. We got the low pressure. The pressure starting to rise again here as that low moves away from us. But our winds have shifted now from the west. We were seeing when it was approaching us our winds from the east because there's a counterclockwise flow around this, and now that it's to our north, we are seeing that west wind here, and it's getting a little bit breezier and a little more rainy here than it's been over the last several hours. Let's go in studio and talk more about this and also the inland impacts with Alex, who is now joining us. And Alex, what are the rainfall rates like out of this system for those people that live inland?
Yeah, they're going to be really very heavy. No question about it, Steph. We've seen it there along the Gulf Coast. Now, certainly they'll come down from where they have been, but plenty enough to cause some issues here for us well inland. We're talking even get up into the parts of the Carolinas with some heavy rain. Let's take a look at what we're seeing right now in terms of the precipitation and where it's headed. There's your timestamp. Now, this is the European model's depiction of where this thing's going to be headed. Slowly on off towards the north and the east. Again, taking some of that heavy rain, North Georgia, Carolinas. Even the mid-Atlantic sees some of that rain. This is by the time we get to Friday evening, Friday night. Finally, may see this thing emerge off the East Coast at that point. But look at this through tomorrow, pretty large area where we are in that likely to even very likely zone of dealing with flash flooding. The very likely the red, the likely is that yellow that extends into a good chunk of Georgia, Atlanta, Macon, down towards the Albany area. All locations where flash flooding is going to be a possibility and in fact likely in those areas. Now, not everyone in the yellow will see it, but the chances are pretty high for it. So flash flood watches there are up through Friday, and that extends all the way up through parts of South Carolina. Columbia are in there, working over towards the Greenville-Spartanburg region, even parts of North Carolina as well. We'll be watching you. Our forecast here for the rain, pretty large swath of 3 to 5 inches of rain, anywhere in that yellow. And there, of course, there could be some locally higher amounts. Cannot rule that out. You see some oranges dotting the landscape here and there. That's 5+ inches of rain. So again, that's extending again well away from the coast. This thing's still going to have quite a bit of juice to work with, and it's going to dump that rain. So by tonight, still, again, slow mover, still across southern parts of Alabama, the center of the circulation. But again, this thing has been loaded on the east side, and so that's where we're going to find the bulk of our rain towards the north and the east. From Montgomery towards the south and east, that's where we can anticipate some of the heavier rains, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches possible. Lighter amounts as you head on off towards the north and the west. Once we get into tomorrow, finally seeing this thing crossing the state line now into Georgia. It's going to be a wet one for us there. Places like, again, Columbia sliding up towards Charlotte. Thursday night, still finding that rain starting to spread a little bit farther north now, maybe even getting into parts of Virginia. The rainfall around the ATL, 3, 4, 5 inches of rainfall will be possible in these areas here. Quite a bit of rain is anticipated. So again, just be prepared for some flooding in a few locations, flash flooding. If you see the water on the roads, turning around is what you want to be doing. Going through it is just not worth it. Tomorrow into Friday, that likely zone shifts now again into the upstate of South Carolina and parts of North Carolina as well, with that flood threat remaining very, very real. Well, as Hurricane Sally continues to push into the Gulf Coast, Comcast is opening up some Wi-Fi hotspots throughout potentially impacted areas. This to help residents and emergency personnel stay connected during and after the storm. That includes non-customers, and this is all for free. All you have to do is visit www.xfinity.com/Wi-Fi, and you can find a hotspot there. All right, well, let's get back out to Stephanie Abrams here, who was in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Of course, Steph, you are dealing with the eye of the system. Pretty incredible.
Yeah. It is, and it is. What's incredible too is we were in the eye, and just 30 miles to our east, Jim Cantori in Pensacola was getting hammered at the exact same time. We did have a lot of rain before that, nearly 20 inches. There was a flash flood warning here because there was so much rain that fell in such a short period of time. And now we're going to focus on those of you inland who are going to be dealing with this type of rainfall and these rainfall rates as well. You see the wind has picked up. We're seeing a little more water here falling from the sky than we've seen as of late, as we're getting to the backside of Sally, as it is still just creeping 3 miles an hour. So it is making matters worse. It's exacerbating the situation for so many because it's taking so long to get through. But we'll be here throughout it with you on the Weather Channel.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 64 degrees under sunny skies. Today, a mix of clouds and sun, high 86, winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. Low 56. Winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny. High 78. Winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Hurricane Sally, and it's way too dangerous to be out in the elements, so we're tucked back in. You see, we have huge chunks of debris that have been tumbling around. We're right here, right on the Gulf of Mexico. It's really too dangerous to be out in the elements, so we're tucked back in. We've lost power. We've heard debris banging throughout the building here. We have seen water ponding here. Now listen, this isn't that, huge of a deal with flooding, but I can guarantee you that with that push of water and the rain, there's significant flooding in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Let me show you some of the debris. I actually found this piece of sheet metal, and it was flying around, and so we just stuck it where it couldn't do any more damage or hurt to anybody. In the pool, we've been seeing white caps on the pool just from the wind, and of course the eye wall is the worst part. We'll eventually get into the eye where there will be a significant calm. Right now we're not able to broadcast due to the obvious conditions.
It is now 3:17 in Gulf Shores, Alabama. We went through the eye wall and we're starting to get into the eye. It's still breezy. We're not fully in it, but we're getting into it. There's been damage. We've been hearing it in the hotel. It's been pitch black, no power. You see that there's been, pieces of furniture that have tumbled across. And there's been a lot of rain as well. In Gulf Shores, reports of 20-some inches of rain. And because of the winds and the weather, the bridges are shut down. And this eye wall is headed north now towards Mobile.
And I'll tell you this, covering landfalling hurricanes in the middle of the night is the absolute worst. It is hard to see anything. It's hard to shoot anything. And so that's why during that we had to really just be tucked back because stuff would just go flying by. And it's just too dangerous to be outside. And now that we have daylight, we are seeing some more significant damage. And there's still some flooding out there. Even though the worst of the weather has really gone past us, we're now on the back side of the system. The winds have shifted over from the west. And just look how bad the waves and the ocean was, that it took a chunk from this pier that was destroyed in Ivan in 2004, which, by the way, Ivan made landfall 16 years ago on this date, which is September 16th, no less. And they redid it in 2009 after that. And now, unfortunately, they are going to have to put together a significant chunk of that. And then the dunes, by the way, all the beaches, Alabama to Florida, they've just been eaten away by this wave action here. And I'm sure that we'll have to get out there, not we, but people will have to get out there and fix all those dunes and check out those beaches as well, because they definitely have been chewed apart. And, Jim, I was just saying, I don't even know if you could hear me, but these nightfall landfalling hurricanes are the absolute worst.
Yeah, for everybody. For everybody, Steph. I mean, people being in their homes and then they start seeing water come under the front door, which was the case here in Pensacola. The lights are out, the power's out. It's scary. You hear sounds. And you and I both showed this. Remember back in Laura where the wind goes through the building. My building sounded like somebody was cutting it up with a chainsaw. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Yeah. The sounds you go through. Yeah, it's horrible. And you like you said, eighth landfall of the season, a record. All right, guys, I want to show you where we're at here. This is Main Street and Palafox. We have not seen any decrease in the surge. All right, so the water is still up here. We maxed out at 5.6 feet. That is the third highest on record here in Pensacola. I was talking to Mike Wood. He's kind of stuck here with us at this high point. And he was telling me, look, we got high water rescue vehicles in town, and they've been trying to get to as many people. They were overwhelmed with 911 calls. So speaking of going through at night. So again, looking up Main toward Palafox, you can see the street light that's out there. That's actually one of the higher points. So the water not in some of the businesses here, but we can't say that for everywhere else. As a matter of fact, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's look down this part of Main Street where the water's a little bit deeper. If we're going to get back to our hotel, we actually have to walk through that. All right, and it's going to be over our waist to walk through that. But if you hold your stuff up high and just kind of take it easy, feel your way, feel your feet, you can do it. But obviously this is our position. We're at a high point, and any way to get back to a hotel or just a place to take all these wet clothes off, that's what we're going to have to do. So cars obviously not faring so well. Anytime this is saltwater intrusion. This is saltwater intrusion, and anytime you get salt water on any kind of electronics, they're toast. And we've seen a couple of these cars kind of flashing. If you were watching us earlier this morning near the museum here, Brad, the Pensacola Museum, I was kind of pointing them out and walking across the street to that Kia, and you can see how the water's come up since then. So it was about 5 feet. It came up another half a foot since then. And so we still got the potential to at least keep the water up as high as it is right now for several more hours before we get past high tide at 11:30, and then maybe things recede. Our wind and rain have calmed a bit, okay? A storm moving on shore, I don't care how fast it's moving, is going to gradually weaken in intensity, but it's a slow weakening. All right, a slow weakening at that. And the damage here done, and the calling card of this, the third highest storm surge on record. Got an update from a buddy of mine who's a meteorologist, Rob Aceto. 36 inches of rain now at Tiger Point in Florida. 36 inches of rain. So think about that. Here in Pensacola, over 2 feet of rain. All that's trying to get out, too. It's trying to get back out into the bay. The wind is holding it in. And as long as we stay on the east side of this storm, collapsing or not, it is going to be a long time before that is done. Pensacola, hang in there. We got a long day and probably a long night ahead of us here. Be right back.
Welcome into our continuing coverage of Hurricane Sally as it continues to just absolutely batter the northern Gulf Shore, making landfall last night as a Category 2 hurricane near Gulf Shores, Alabama. I'm meteorologist Felicia Combs coming to you from Daphne, Alabama. I'm just across Mobile Bay from the city of Mobile. You can kind of make out I-10 here in my background, and then you can see Mobile Bay, lush marshlands here just off to our west. Now this is looking west over the bay. One thing I can tell you is the eye has moved away. It's not raining a ton here right now, but we have had sustained tropical storm force winds. So winds at or around 39 miles per hour or higher for since yesterday around noon. So we've been nearing or at those tropical storm force winds for almost 12 hours at this point, and then gusting even higher than that. We're talking about gusting upwards of 67, 72 miles per hour. So the wind has been the big story here in Daphne and in Mobile. We've heard that we have tons of power outages at this point just in the Mobile area, more than 150,000 power outages, and that is going to continue to climb. We are not done with this here. We're going to continue with the rain falling. We're going to continue with these winds that are going to be gusting even higher at times. I'll tell you, it calms down like this and it can be kind of deceiving, and then all of a sudden you get that wind coming in from the north and you have the wind just absolutely blowing you around. So the officials here are urging people just to stay in. Don't be out and about trying to look at damage, because we have had some damage reported. And of course, with power lines down, you don't want to be out and about in that as well. Now, Gulf Shore's just to the south of us, and of course, that's around where Sally made landfall, and it has just been ripping up Pensacola, which is just to our east. Now, Daphne is a little bit farther inland, so even though we're on the bay, we're not worried about any surge issues here for this point in Daphne, because the bay is actually going to get pushed by these northerly winds out. So this is the 16th anniversary of Ivan. Hurricane Ivan actually made landfall on this day 16 years ago, right around Gulf Shores, and it brought so much damage, so much destruction and storm surge into Daphne. We had incredible storm surge coming from the bay with Ivan, and that is just not the case that we're getting with Sally, because we've got these northerly winds. Now, eventually these winds are going to switch around to more of a northwesterly direction, and they're going to continue to be very gusty. So the thing that I would tell you, if you're in Mobile, if you're in Daphne, just stay in, because you never know when one of these wind gusts can come along, blow a tree down, blow debris around it. This has been going on. So these trees have sustained hours and hours of tropical storm force winds. I guarantee we're going to continue to see these power outage numbers climb in the Mobile area around Daphne, because these winds just aren't letting up. The ground is saturated. In fact, in this area, we're under a flash flood warning for about another hour, and also river flooding. That's going to be a big problem. We're already starting to see some of the local rivers and creeks flooding around here, and it's only going to get worse as this rain continues to drop. I mentioned that we are to the west of Pensacola, and Pensacola just absolutely getting hammered there on the shore. So I want to get over to Jim. Jim, I've been watching you all morning, and that storm surge is just mind-blowing.
It's incredible, Felicia. Can we borrow some of your northerly winds, by the way? We need to push this water back out into Pensacola Bay. So we'd love to borrow some of those. Guys, in all seriousness, this is just horrible.
I wish I could send them your way.
We're at Maine. Yeah, hopefully you will by tonight, right? Hopefully here at Maine and Halifax, we'll get to feel some of those northerly winds, because we got a lot of water to push out. This is actually one of the high points, too. So at least looking here, I don't see water in buildings. Okay, but as we kind of spin here, you can certainly see what's going on down the rest of Maine. I mean, we got waves. We got whitecaps coming down through here, so a lower point. And we're going to have to walk through that to get back to our hotel. And that's going to be, over waist-deep water down there. So a lot of cars, a lot of vehicles underwater in through here. Again, we were talking to the public information officer this morning, Mike Wood, here in Pensacola, and he was talking about just, how much literally the 911 system almost overwhelmed with people calling as the water started coming in, and we started losing power, which was, way before the sun came up. And that's just an eerie feeling. Imagine being in your home and having that water just starting to sneak in. You're like, where the heck is that coming from? And this is salt water. Okay, this is from the Gulf of Mexico, which has come up through Pensacola Bay, which is down in front of me, which is what we had to retreat from. All right, and I want to show you this, because a lot of times you don't get to see the behind the scenes. Right, this is why we're at high ground. All right, we're sitting here at high ground, but you know, certainly playing with another foot and a half before we have to start worrying about anything, and I don't think we're going to get there from this point. But either way, 5.6 feet of storm surge. That is the third highest storm surge on record in Pensacola. We passed Katrina's storm surge, for goodness sake. Ivan, eerily, on the same doggone date, which is just blowing my mind in through here. But, I mean, just look at this for a second. This is just a major city in western Florida, and we are underwater, and we're going to be that way for several hours here with saltwater. Again, a lot of folks at home, if you know them and they still have cell service, just tell them they're going to deal with this for the next several hours, all right? And then we're going to have to deal with some strong northerly winds as well. Hopefully that'll help us push the water out as we get into later on this afternoon and tonight. But until we get that northerly wind component, there's so much water that's trying to either get out, that is fresh water falling, and plus the storm surge component here. We have not hit high tide yet this morning. So both getting on the other side of the tide and also having winds change direction a little bit are going to help us, but it's going to take several hours before that is going to happen. Greg Postel, you've obviously been looking at this and dissecting it for us this morning. You know, 5.6 feet, we've kind of fluctuated around that. Do you think we go up from there? And if we do, how much?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, Jim, with the high tide coming in and some of that fresh water drainage coming out, and both of those two will lead to some more water rises. But eventually, I think later on today, with the reduction in the wind speed and the gradual sort of turning of the wind away from that onshore component, we will start to see those levels come down. That's good news in a few hours' time. Right now, we have a Category 1 hurricane still inland. Now, believe it or not, it's not that far inland. In fact, it made landfall early this morning about, well, 5 or 6 hours ago, and is now only about 10 or 12 miles inland. So this is not the usual case where these things hit the coastline and then are way inland shortly thereafter. This is still hammering parts of Florida and Alabama. Here's just some sampling of some of the peak wind gusts we've got. Fort Morgan, Alabama, I might add, had a wind gust right around there earlier of about 120 miles per hour, but that was at an elevation over 100 feet. So it's hard to sort of translate what that would be at the surface. But here's some of those surface wind estimates at the standard elevation height of the anemometer. And we've seen a lot of 70 to 80 to 90, even close to 100 mile per hour wind gusts, which may have caught a lot of people by surprise, including yours truly, because this is, again, yet another iteration of a rapidly intensifying hurricane right before landfall in the Gulf of Mexico. It used to be the norm, right, where we'd have these things weaken on final approach. They're now strengthening. It seems to be happening a lot. Anyway, there is where the sort of center of circulation is. We're getting a lot of that onshore component. And we're going to continue to see that today, and you can see some of the wind gusts, 82 miles per hour. Still at Pensacola. This is remarkable what we're seeing here. And the amount of rain, this is a radar estimate. We're seeing rainfall estimates somewhere around 2 feet, but there have been reports of closer to 3 feet. In fact, we got a report of 36 inches. It's not on this map, but we do know that Bellevue got a report of 30 inches of rain. Now, this is a storm total, so it's not all happening in the last 12 hours, but you can get the sense that an incredible and historic amount of rainfall has accompanied the landfall of Sally. We have a tornado watch out that goes until 6 o'clock local time. The threat of tornadoes is real today along the Florida Panhandle in southern Alabama and southern Georgia, even though right now we don't have any tornado warnings. That's good news. The rain, though, is continuing to slowly move northward through Alabama and Georgia, and will bring a lot of rain northward through Atlanta, for example, through, let's say, Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, even Raleigh. By the time this thing is all said and done later tomorrow and Friday, we're going to get at least a few inches of rain with likely some flooding even as far north as North Carolina. But let me time this out and talk about when that wind is going to change direction on the northern Gulf Coast to allow some of that water to slosh back in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, right now, we've got, as I said, we have that onshore component of the wind that is not helping anything. But eventually, by later on this afternoon and evening, you can see the wind changes direction out of the west. That is going to allow the water to move back substantially. So that's good news. By early mid-afternoon, we'll see that take place. But overall, we're going to be dealing with the movement of Sally northward into Alabama and Georgia. And by, let's say, tomorrow morning, it's not going to be a hurricane anymore. The wind will be a little bit a factor, but not a lot. It's going to be the rain, and it's going to be all that heavy rain, potentially flooding areas in Georgia, western North Carolina, and South Carolina as well. And Jim, we're not going to be done with this thing probably until later on Friday. So take care, buddy, out there. Stay safe from all that rising water, and get out of that water if you can. It is not safe to be in there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Postel. You know, we're actually at high ground now, as is Mike Wood. He's the public information officer here at Pensacola for the Pensacola Police Department. And Mike, you're trapped up here with us. I mean, you can't go anywhere. But I do want to get an update on how the whole morning unfolded. I mean, all of a sudden, you guys just got overwhelmed with 911 calls.
Yeah, the calls immediately started coming in, especially as the water rose. Not a lot of people thought that was going to happen. They weren't prepared for that. I don't think any of us were ready for that. And now we're making rescues. Several rescues have been done this morning. We have high water vehicles that are being provided by the National Guard, and we're thankful that they're here to assist us.
Do you know how many that we have with us?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't know the exact number, but we've had several rescues that officers just could not. They're very busy. They could not wait. They had to get out of their patrol cars and walk through this water and go to several homes to get these people out on their own.
You had to do that yourself, you said?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so another officer then.
Yeah, Pensacola police officers have done that.
Do you know how many people are still waiting for rescue? Any idea, any rough number? Or?
We have a lot of calls on the screen right now. We have a lot of them. Yeah.
So we know the water's going to start to come down a little bit this afternoon. What additional resources may be provided to you, or is what you see what you get?
Well, I think what we have, we're working with now. There's always more that's going to come until the chief and the sheriff and other officials say that we're good to go.
So, in your recollection, what does this remind you of another time or another storm where it was this bad?
Yeah, this reminds me of 16 years ago today, Hurricane Ivan. Yeah, no kidding. Absolutely.
And the water was even higher there.
Yeah, this is again a water storm. Ivan had a lot of wind to it. This is more water, more storm surge than I remember with Ivan. I do remember it being flooded downtown like this, but I don't remember it coming up as quickly as it did this time.
So topographically, I mean, I was telling everybody where we were at Maine and Halifax over there. It's a little bit of a high point. Water wasn't coming in buildings, but as you go down toward the bay, it gets lower, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And you saw how fast it rose when we were down there earlier this morning at Halifax Pier, and then it just made its way northbound on Halifax like it has a few times before.
Unbelievable. Mike, we appreciate it. I guess we'll see you around this high point in through here because of what we got going on. All right, brother. Thank you for that update. I appreciate it and that brief. Certainly, you can see the kind of water, guys, that we have behind us in through here. Postel, I want to talk a little bit about where we go from here. Maybe a few more specifics on some different cities like Montgomery, Birmingham, Atlanta, Augusta, Greenville. Some of these are. I mean, what can we expect? Is this going to be one of these situations where all of a sudden you bring this massive tropical moisture into a major metropolitan area, which is full of cement and asphalt, and it can't drain out? Is there a potential of seeing numerous flash flood warnings and even an emergency in areas like that? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, it is indeed possible, Jim, and in part because it's moving slowly. At least today it will be moving slowly across parts of southern Alabama. Yeah. And here's our rainfall forecast, Jim. We're going for perhaps as much as 5 to 8 inches, maybe 8 to 12 inches in some spots in southern Alabama, with the slow movement still of Sally. But by the time you were talking about like farther north in Atlanta and let's say Greenville, Columbia, South Carolina, Charlotte, and Raleigh, less amounts are going to be likely because it will begin to accelerate on its way northeastward. It will get caught up in the jet stream.
Good.
And yeah, that's good news. But to your point, we are still dealing with the potential for significant flooding in Georgia and parts of the western Carolinas, with a lot of heavy rain and a lot of tropical juice to access with Sally, even though it is moving more quickly by then.
So, Greg, I always do this with you because I think people appreciate your insight tremendously, so I'm going to do it again. What surprised you the most from the time you left the Weather Channel yesterday to the time that you got up and started looking at Sally this morning?
Well, that's an amazing question because we've been talking about it here all morning long, and what really concerned me was the pressure drops that the hurricane hunters were finding last evening. And I just tweeted out that the pressure dropped in the last 12 hours about 15 millibars. This thing was rapidly intensifying on final approach, as I mentioned that earlier. So when you started to see that, it took a little bit time for the wind to adjust to that pressure fall. But you saw the wind increase about 25 miles per hour in just the last 12 hours, Jim. I think that caught a lot of people off guard. The wind factor with this. We knew it was going to be a disaster with flooding, but the wind was a really big concern.
And even talking to Mike Wood, you know, he's been watching this thing to the west for the last couple of days. I think it caught a lot of people off here guard because it just kept shifting off these. So what burned us is the intensity factor and also the track, because it wasn't locked in days before like we're used to. But they're not ever locked in. All right, Felicia Combs in Daphne, Alabama here. Felicia, we want to borrow some of your northerly winds. Please, can you send them over? We need to push this water back out to the bay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We got really lucky here on Mobile Bay, Jim, that we have the northerly wind, and eventually it's going to make it to you, and eventually our winds are going to be shifting around to the northwest. What's not going to be happening anytime soon is these winds calming down. We're going to be stuck in around tropical storm force winds for most of the day today, and this is really going to be about duration. As we've been saying this whole storm, it's not so much the strength, although a Category 2 storm is strong, it's the duration, and we're in it for the long haul with you guys here on the Weather Channel. Stick around, we've got continuous coverage of Hurricane Sally.
Currently in our area, 67 degrees under fair skies. Today, sunny to partly cloudy. High 86. Winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy. Low 56. Winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny. High 78. Winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Well, here we are looking in on Pensacola, Florida, and my goodness, look at that. Clearly water where it should not be. Cars that are surrounded by all that water. You'd imagine that these cars are going to be certainly in trouble trying to get those started and going after all that essentially salt water impacts them. That's going to be a no-go there. But just goes to show you here, it's been an issue when it comes to the water. We talked about this all along, how the water was going to be one of the big players when it came to Sally, and we are certainly seeing that, not just the rainfall, but also the push of water, that surge driving on in as well. Gusty winds. We've seen winds gusting in Pensacola, at least at the Naval Air Force Base, getting up over 90 miles per hour at times. Well, let's get you some new video here coming in out of also Pensacola and showing you some of the what's going on. Again, more cars surrounded by water. This is a street as the camera pans around, and you can see this street is filled with water. I mean, the water lapping up over the hood of some of these vehicles. You got SUVs in there as well, and again, sloshing around is that water. This is the type of stuff you do not want to be in. You can see there's debris in that water, nasty water. You don't want to be working your way through it and stepping in that stuff. And again, just don't want to be out there at all in this type of activity. Again, the winds have been gusty as well. There's been some damage associated with that, but no doubt that water is going to be the main calling card when this is all said and done with Sally. Well, if you're just joining us, here is what we know about Sally at this hour. Made that landfall near Gulf Shores, Alabama at about 4:45 this morning Central Time. This has a Category 2 hurricane. The National Hurricane Center cone putting nearly 14 million people in the cone. Meanwhile, some areas near Pensacola are reporting at least 24 inches of rain so far. Right now, more than 500,000 customers are without power. That's in Alabama as well as Florida. And emergency officials right now are urging Pensacola Beach residents to store water, this after a water main break. So yeah, still a lot to track when it comes to the system. Yes, issues at the coast, but we don't stop there. Again, it's a slow mover, but it will eventually begin to move its way north and eastbound, and that's going to spread the rain north and eastbound as well. So we do have an area likelihood of dealing with flash flooding here as we head through the rest of the day and into tomorrow. Still a very likely zone as well. Now, it's not that everyone in this area will see flash flooding, but you have a pretty good chance of seeing that somewhere in those yellow and red zones, and even in the green areas, the possibility exists as well. So there are flash flood watches. The National Weather Service office is posting these up here for us. Atlanta, Macon, Greenville, Spartanburg are all in those flash flood watches here for the rest of the day heading into Friday. The rainfall amounts This is what we are anticipating here. Still to come, still a large zone of 5 to 8 inches, southeastern parts of Alabama into western Georgia, maybe even around the Atlanta area. You could see 5 to 8, but it's certainly a wide swath of 3 to 5 inches. It's that yellow zone that extends even into southeastern parts of Virginia, the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. You could see some heavy rain from the system as it eventually moves in your direction. So this is what we look like tonight. Still looking at a slow moving system here, southern parts of Alabama here. So again, not a whole lot of movement with it, but it's still going to be dumping that rain, adding up here in the Montgomery area. Looks about 5 or so inches there in Montgomery still to go. Lighter amounts as you move off towards the north and the west. Again, it's that west side of the system. That's the quote-unquote drier side, but north and east, that's where we find quite a bit of that rain. Once we get to tomorrow, we see the center of the circulation now crossing state lines into Georgia, but still spreading more of that rain, even getting up into parts of the mid-Atlantic. By the time we get to Thursday night, now moving into South Carolina. But again, north and east, that's where we're expecting some of the heaviest rains. Things will start to improve on the west side in terms of that heavy rainfall. But around the Atlanta metro, it looks like, again, 3, 4, 5 plus inches of rainfall will be possible. Trying to travel on some of these interstates. 20 heading east and westbound, north and south as well along 75 and 85. Not going to be easy rides because, again, it's going to be some heavy rain, downpours, and, of course, some gusty winds also accompanying some of that rain. Tomorrow into Friday, northeast parts of Georgia getting into North Carolina. That's going to be our likely zone of flash flooding. So, again, this continues well away from the coast, well inland as well. But let's head back down towards the Gulf Coast. That's where, of course, we find our very own Felicia Combs. They're in Daphne, Alabama. And Felicia, you've been dealing with the rain coming down relentlessly, does not want to stop.
Yeah, Alex, we've been stuck in at least a light, steady rain. And, you know, that is adding on top of the already almost 4 inches that have been recorded at the Mobile downtown airport. I bet we're up to 4 inches at this point, actually. And then, of course, the big story here that we've been dealing with since yesterday at noon. Get this. We've had sustained winds gusting upwards of the tropical storm force since overnight. But we've had those wind gusts of at least tropical storm force since yesterday around noon. That is crazy. And we're not going to see this ending anytime soon. We're going to continue with those very gusty winds. I want to show you something really quickly. Take a look off in the distance. That's I-10. If you took that west, you'd end up in Mobile. Take it west about 11 miles going over Mobile Bay. This is actually where a semi-truck ended up turned over because of these winds. That's why we're saying, you know, stay off the roads. It is dangerous out there. They actually had to close down I-10 eastbound because of that truck being overturned. And you know what? As you can see here, the winds are not letting down at all. We actually drove up yesterday from New Orleans when it wasn't as bad as it was today, and it was still a pretty rough drive. So, of course, stick with the Weather Channel. We've got all the information that you need to know with our continuing coverage of Hurricane Sally. All right, we want you to see some new video. This is out of Gulf Shores. Of course, that's right around where Sally made landfall earlier this morning, or, you know, overnight last night, very early this morning as a Category 2 storm. You can see the just absolute craziness here. Obviously, the storm surge making a big impact, the bands of rain moving through. This was just kind of mind-blowing when you think about a storm that we're expecting to weaken as it's interacting with land. Sally actually strengthened. So this storm has been one of those that's just continued to outdo itself with the duration, with the rain, with the storm surge that we're seeing in places like Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Pensacola. So really a formidable storm when you're thinking about Sally. We are in Daphne, Alabama right now. That's where I'm coming to you live. That is about an hour's drive from Gulf Shores north. So I'd say about 45 miles-ish, a little less than 40 miles from Gulf Shores, around where Sally made landfall. But I will tell you, the winds here have just been so intense, but you can kind of tell they go away. It gets very calm, and you might think, oh, well, we're done with it for the day. And then before you know it, all of a sudden you're just getting blown around completely. And I think that's going to be the story for the rest of the day for us. Now, as of last check, there was more than 150,000 people in the Mobile area without power. Guys, that number is going to continue to grow. If you are in the Mobile area, if you're in Daphne, I want you to go ahead and if you still have power, I want you to prepare for not having power, because if it goes out, it might be out for a little while, because of course those crews can't get out and start fixing things in winds like this, and these winds are going to persist for quite some time. We're going to have around tropical storm force wind gusts, at least as we head through the rest of the day today and into tonight. So for where I am in Daphne, we have a flash flood warning because we are seeing some of that rain beginning to add up. At the Mobile airport, the Mobile downtown airport, more than 4 inches has already fallen. And then we also have the hurricane warning here, and still we're looking at that possibility for some river flooding over the next several days. So it's really a duration thing. We've been saying it quite a few times on air. It's a marathon, not a sprint, because when you're talking about winds like this continuing for an entire other day, trees are going to continue to come down, and we're going to continue to see some of that damage starting to pick up. So, Dr. Postel, you know, the local officials have been urging people to just stay inside, don't get out and be on the roads, because there are those power outages, and you never know when you're going to end up in a gust like this. So I think that's the best idea, and just watch the Weather Channel to know what's going on out there.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Felicia. You're exactly right about that. I mean, we're still dealing with a lot of water rise along the Florida and Alabama coastlines with that onshore wind and the freshwater flooding as well, with some places getting as much as 3 feet of rain already. And again, some of the wind gusts right along the coast near and around Pensacola gusting to 80 miles per hour, even now, 5 hours after landfall. That is remarkable. And the part of the reason why is because this thing is still barely moving. Sally's going only at 4 miles per hour. So while it made landfall like 5 hours ago, it's only about 10 or so miles inland, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 15 or 20, but not by much. And we have some sample here of some of the peak wind gusts. I'm going to be filling this in within the next half hour, so tune back in because I'm going to put a lot of the wind reports we've got. But Fort Morgan, Alabama, at an elevation at about a little over 100 feet, reported a wind gust of 120 plus miles per hour, a little over 120. Hard to know exactly how that translates to the surface, probably somewhere closer to 105 or 110 miles per hour. But that's the kind of wind gust that we got that got so many people off guard, I think, because this hurricane rapidly intensified in the final few hours before landfall yet again. This is the 4th case that I can think of in recent years where we've seen that happen with dramatic consequences. And so while we've got Sally here, we are right now continuing with that onshore wind pushing the water still from the Gulf of Mexico with the wind at high velocity. As I said, some cases we're still gusting almost to 80 miles per hour. In fact, Pensacola now down a little bit, gusting to 71. Herbert Field gusting to 56. Milton 61, Mobile now gusting to 68. So we've got a lot of wind still and a lot of rain yet to come, even though we've reported so far some places, as I mentioned, getting as much as 3 feet, but we have a much broader scope of that rain, which is accumulated in the 1 to 2 foot range. Here's an example. Bellevue, Florida, 30 inches of rain. It's gone up since this last report. Pensacola Naval Air Station, almost 25 inches of rain. That's gone up since the latest report. So we are dealing with still the consequences of Sally bringing all that rain and a lot of destructive wind still, with even the possibility of some tornadoes where we have that tornado watch going until 6 o'clock local time. So stay tuned for all the latest on Sally. It's track, the forecast, and the live coverage in the field you won't get anywhere else.
Breaking now, as you see some pictures coming in out of Orange Beach, Alabama. And look at that boat. Yeah, that boat should not be there. But again, because of that push of water, that surge, thanks to Sally, brought that boat to an area leaning on its side now at this point. Just goes to show you the power of water. We talked about how that would be the case when it came to Sally. Sure, gusty, strong winds, but the water was going to be one of the big impacts from some of the surge as well as the rain coming down from the sky. We're certainly seeing quite a bit in a few areas as well. All right, let's continue to track what's going on with Sally, and we do have a flash flood warning that is in place. This is a flash flood emergency for Baldwin, Escambia, Santa Rosa counties, actually parts of Baldwin County under that flash flood emergency at this point. Sort of a heightened flash flood warning that is in place until 5:30 here for us. We've seen some very heavy rain, in fact, within this zone. Some estimates they're getting up around 20 inches and even some ground truth to that in some of these areas. So that kind of rain, That's the type of stuff we're talking about that can cause some major, major issues. You do not want to be getting out there and trying to drive through this stuff. It is not a good idea. Could potentially turn deadly. We've heard of water rescues taking place in several areas. And so, again, to put yourself in harm's way as well as those who have to come rescue you in harm's way, we can all avoid that by avoiding this water. So, again, a flash flood emergency that's in place for parts of Baldwin County there in Alabama at this point. We're still finding some very heavy rain, and it's going to be that way for some time because this thing is still slowly moving off towards the northeast. All right, let's get down to Daphne, Alabama. That's where we find our very own meteorologist, Felicia Combs. And Felicia, still some gusty winds, still some wet weather that you're finding at this hour.
Yeah, Alex, that's right. Now, it's been a very light but steady rain. It's been at least lightly raining since yesterday, but what has really been just so problematic here is the wind. The winds have been blowing just persistently. We've had tropical storm force gusts since yesterday, winds sustained around tropical storm force for hours now at this point. Overnight, we lost power actually where we are in Daphne, and we are not alone. In fact, most of the Baldwin County customers at this point are without power, and I do think those power outages are going to continue to grow. Now, we want to head south to Orange Beach. I was actually talking to a man who's staying here in our same hotel. He evacuated to here because he and his wife live in Orange Beach, and they started to see the storm surge coming up 2 days, he said, coming up into their yard before Sally had even made landfall, so like 2 days ago. So they decided to evacuate up here, and he was asking me this morning, have you heard any information out of Orange Beach, because I've been trying to contact our friends and our neighbors there, and I haven't been able to get in contact with them. So it just goes to reiterate the fact that, when you don't evacuate a place like Orange Beach, you're going to be cut off from connections with people, because I'm guessing maybe the cell towers are down. So, there are a lot of different elements to staying in a place that's really going to get pummeled by a hurricane like Hurricane Sally. Now, making landfall around Gulf Shores, Alabama, which is about an hour's drive south from us, last night at its Category 2 strength storm. But the crazy part about it is Sally is slowly beginning to pull away, but we're not seeing any change in the winds here. We're still getting these very, very gusty winds. And I just want to give you a little bit of an idea exactly where we are. You may have never heard of Daphne. We're on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay. So you can see just behind me, we've got Mobile Bay. That's actually D'Olive Marsh. It's fed by D'Olive Creek. So that's marshland that you see it. If we could go a little bit farther south, you would see the actual waters of the bay. In the distance, we're about 11 miles east of the city of Mobile, and you would be able to see this from here if it wasn't raining so hard, if it wasn't so kind of visibility reduced conditions at this point. So that's kind of the layout of where we are. Now, exactly 16 years ago on this day, Hurricane Ivan made landfall once again around Gulf Shores and brought absolute destruction to Daphne. That's why we're so thankful for these northerly winds, because Alex's southerly wind could have meant a completely different story here in Daphne. But then, of course, it's not just along the coast, it's also inland where we've got a rain threat.
Absolutely, Felicia. That's something that we're going to be following over the next couple of days. Again, this thing's still moving very slowly, but first, here's some live pictures coming in out of Orange Beach, Alabama, and you can see still some swaying trees here for us. Also, some gusty conditions that we are seeing at this point, and some water. And look at that boat. The boat in a position where it should not be at this point. So it just goes to show you the power of that water that we've been dealing with here with the system, pushing a lot of water here onto land and pushing some of these boats onto land as well. Now we're going to watch this thing continue to work its way north and eastbound, spreading that rain, and the flash flood risk will be spreading as well. It's moving through basically the rest of the day and into tomorrow. We have a zone of likely flash flooding here. Anywhere you see that yellow showing up. Now that does not mean that everyone in the yellow will see flash flooding, but everyone in the yellow has a likelihood of dealing with it. So just be prepared. Atlanta, Macon, Albany, all the way down towards Tallahassee as well. We still have a decent bit of western Florida in that zone. National Weather Service offices here have issued some flash flood watches. Those go up all the way through even parts of the Carolinas. So again, this rain will be spreading in those areas, and you can see the forecast here, a pretty wide swath of yellow. That's 3 to 5 inches of rain as forecast going through Friday. But even within that, there could be some pockets of 5 to 8 inches. Certainly a possibility. So some very heavy rain that's going to be spreading its way north and eastbound as this thing slowly churns Sally to the northeast right now at about 5 miles per hour.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 69 degrees under sunny skies. Today, sunny to partly cloudy. High 86. Winds light and variable. Tonight, partly cloudy. Low 56. Winds north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Thursday, mainly sunny. High 78. Winds northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Here's our 7-day out.
Gusts, you know, we're getting easily 70, 60, 75 miles per hour here. We've had gusts at the airport over 80, so it's hammering away. Absolutely hammering away through here on the east side of this thing. Kind of amazed, certainly, at what happened during the overnight hours with it. But that's what happens, guys. As long as you have a hurricane over water, they can deepen, they can strengthen even further. And that's exactly what this one did. This is storm surge from Sally, and its slow movement is just going to keep us in this water. And this is salt water. Remember that. This is salt water that's come in from the Gulf of Mexico through Pensacola Bay and now into the downtown area. We're at 5.17 feet of storm surge right now. And the arrow now is starting to get more water on it. So we're not done with the water rise yet. Plus winds very, very gusty here. I'm heading down, this is Main Street, right? So now we're still in this eastern eye wall because it's only moving at 3 miles an hour. It's a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane still, and it continues to produce very, very heavy rain. Waist-deep water to my left, about 25 yards. 2-inch water to my right here on Palafox out the street, but it's covering the street. There's nowhere that I see, as we're getting just the first glimpses of light now, that I see an uncovered area here. Water covering everything here. They cannot get to you. All right, so people are going to have to hunker down and deal with this. How much longer could this last, and could the water go up? Well, high tide's at 11, past 11:30 this morning, and as long as we're in this eye wall, which continues to hammer us with heavy rain, we've had over 2 feet of rain at the Naval Air Station. Gusts over 90 miles per hour. 90 miles per hour. So between all of that, without power here in the dark and underwater, and as we mentioned, the 3rd highest storm surge on record here in Pensacola. And I want to show you where we're at here. This is Main Street and Palafox. We have not seen any decrease in the surge. All right, so the water is still up here. We maxed out at 5.6 feet. That is the 3rd highest on record here in Pensacola. I was talking to Mike Wood. He's kind of stuck here with us at this high point. And he was telling me, look, we got high water rescue vehicles in town, and they've been trying to get to as many people. They were overwhelmed with 911 calls. I mean, just look at this for a second. This is just a major city in western Florida, and we are underwater, and we're going to be that way for several hours here with saltwater. Again, a lot of folks at home, if you know them and they still have cell service, just tell them they're going to deal with this for the next several hours. All right.
Jim, thank you very much for all that live reporting. Let's now have the latest on Hurricane Sally, moving still very slowly, just a few miles per hour, 5 miles per hour north-northeast as of the latest advisory. Came out at about 45 minutes ago or so. And we'll be watching this slow movement continue, although it will begin to accelerate, I think, later on today. Look at some of the local wind gust reports that we've gotten. This is, of course, a small sample of all that's out there, but it's pretty good, put together by my weather producers, Greg Diamond and Adam Dean. And what we've got here is, look at some of these wind gusts here. Now, there's a little star right by them giving you an idea that these sites are elevated to some degree. In some cases, elevated by a lot, over 100 feet. But still, a number like this comes in at over 100 miles per hour if you convert it down to the surface. So this is the kind of wind that moved onshore early this morning and still even continues to batter some places, maybe not to these extreme values, but certainly we're seeing a lot of reports of